The weekend, much more in the way of sunshine to come and temperatures climbing towards the low 20s.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can win a whopping £20,000 cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The People's
Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
a decision has been taken to bar Diane Abbott.
Labour in chaos over Diane Abbott.
Do you feel comfortable about what's happened here with Diane Abbott?
No, not particularly. I think this has gone on for a very long time, but...
Should she be allowed to stand for Labour? And
one of my teachers actually suggested to me that I look at apprenticeships, so I applied for a number of apprenticeships, but the one I...
The Tories will scrap Mickey Mouse degrees. The Lib Dem's Ed Davies running a really weird campaign.
I'm not asking for anything other than I've done them some huge favours over the years as a party. Give me something back, we might have a conversation.
Is Nigel Farage about to do a deal with the Tories?
People were chanting death to America. Some people were, not everyone, but some people were.
Find out what a prominent member of the Muslim faith had to say about that. And can you spot what's wrong with this? I've been a centrist conservative all my life, but I think the party's really changed, and I think the last 14 years has done real damage to the country. On my panel is the director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, activist and landlord Adam Brooks, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Oh, and what do you think is in these balloons? I will reveal all very, very shortly. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Young people don't know what's about to hit them. Next.
And the news at just after 9 o'clock. Labour veteran Diane Abbott has vowed to be the MP for Hackney North and Stoke Newington tonight. She said for as long as possible. She was telling a rally of local supporters in London tonight that she will always stand with them. Earlier, Sir Keir Starmer said Labour had not taken any decision to bar Diane Abbott from standing as an MP. Meanwhile, Jeremy Corbyn launched his campaign to be re-elected as the independent MP for Islington North tonight. The launch has been hosted at a community centre which was officially opened by the politician in 2018 as part of a social housing project. He's vowed to be an independent voice for equality, democracy and peace. Well, the Prime Minister's been hitting out to hit plans by junior doctors to stage another round of strikes next month. Members of the British Medical Association will walk out for 5 days, starting from the 27th of June. Speaking this afternoon, Rishi Sunak said it was politically motivated action and not in the interests of patients or staff.
Today's action by the junior doctors, on the same day as the Labour Party are having a health day, does slightly ponder the question as to whether this is politically motivated. It's hard to escape that conclusion given the timing and to call a strike in an election campaign, especially as we found a constructive resolution with the remainder of the NHS workforce.
Meanwhile, NHS waiting list targets would be met within 5 years of a Labour government. That's according to a new pledge by Sir Keir Starmer today. The plan would see an additional 40,000 appointments in England each week, making use of evenings and weekends and bringing wait times down, he said, within the 18-week target. The Tories have called it copy and paste politics and pointed to its plan to invest in NHS technology instead. An inquiry into crimes committed by paediatric nurse and serial killer Lucy Letby will not be live-streamed to the public. Letby was sentenced to 14 whole-life orders for murdering 7 babies and trying to kill 6 others in her care. Lawyers for the families of her victims had argued for the inquiry to be streamed in an effort to counter the spread of what they call grossly offensive conspiracy theories. But the inquiry's chairwoman says there's a risk of breaching court orders, which prevents the identification of several people involved. And that comes after articles appeared in US media questioning some evidence in the case. And just lastly, a volcano in Iceland has been erupting once again today. It's the 5th time since December. If you're watching on TV, take a look at these startling pictures of that volcano spewing magma and ash clouds into the atmosphere. The outburst happening on the Reykjanes Peninsula. That's home to around 30,000 people just south of the capital, Reykjavik. Previous eruptions have forced people to be evacuated from their homes, closed roads and even razed homes to the ground in Grindavik nearby, a fishing town on the coast. That's the news. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on the screen right now or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Let's zone in on a big policy at this election. The Conservatives want to do away with Mickey Mouse degrees and fund more apprenticeships. The theory is this. The average university graduate leaves with £45,000 worth of debt plus interest. They don't start paying that back until they start earning around £25,000 a year. The taxpayer is funding too many young people to spend 3 years drinking Jaeger bombs, smoking cannabis and occasionally studying tourism management at a bang average university, and there is little to no chance of that person paying the taxpayer back or being a productive member of society for many, many years to come. That's the theory. The Tories think that money could be better spent on trainee mechanics, plumbers, gas engineers and people who will get paid whilst they train and then go into a job at the end of it. Here is Education Secretary Gillian Keegan trying to sell this.
I went to what would be known as a failing comprehensive school. One of my teachers actually suggested to me that I look at apprenticeships, so I applied for a number of apprenticeships, but the one I chose was with General Motors. It was a local sub-assembly car factory. I learnt so many things in that car factory. I mean, I don't think you could bottle the experience. It was so good. And we built
OK, so apparently these are the degrees that are the worst value for money. I think we can get them on the screen there now. Photography, translation, criminology, fine art, public administration, film, English lit, fashion and tourism management. Many people who study those degrees are likely to go into different lines of work that did not require them to actually get that degree. OK? So the Tory policy does come at a cost, though. They estimate it would be around £885 million to fund the 100,000 additional apprenticeships. They say they will get that money by simply not paying the loans for people doing silly courses. Well, you're the taxpayer. Would you rather pay for a trainee mechanic or someone to study public administration? Another angle is that we've seen a lot of this at universities recently, haven't we?
One of the big criticisms of this camp has been that if you were visibly Jewish, that you wouldn't necessarily feel that welcome. And I think it's easy to understand why they might feel a bit like that.
Does going to university actually make you more intelligent in every case? There is also this aspect. Universities have been accused now for years of offering a backdoor into Britain by allowing foreign nationals to study rubbish degrees and then get a low-skilled job, driving down wages and saturating the labour market. The stats. There were 409,000 unemployed 18 to 24-year-olds in January to March this year, while apparently 1.9 million were economically inactive. So does it make more sense to drive people towards studying criminology, where the average salary after 5 years is £24,637 a year, or to drive them towards roles like this, which is an engineering operative apprentice on a 12-month course with a salary of £13,312, with a, by the sounds of it, quite a good chance anyway, of being offered a job at that company afterwards? Well, it's a plan for Britain's youngsters. The question now, I suppose, is it a good one? Let's get the thoughts of my panel, shall we? Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We've also got businessman and activist Adam Brooks and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Mark, I'll start with you. What are Mickey Mouse degrees?
Well, the Tories are onto something here, Patrick. These are degrees, I think, unfairly called Mickey Mouse degrees. Actually, I think Walt Disney actually operate a college of their own, so you can literally do a Mickey Mouse degree in America. These are degrees that don't really add to your ability to earn in the workplace. You've highlighted some of them there. So the Conservatives are asserting far better to spend 2 or 3 years learning to be a plumber or an electrician than 2 or 3 years, I don't know, on Mongolian pottery or medieval poetry. And they might be right in this regard, but you hit the nail on the head, Patrick, in your opening remarks. The problem is this: the taxpayer shouldn't be involved at all, really. I mean, you can work out which degrees people fail to pay the money back on when they've had the loan, but I'd much rather leave this to the students and the universities, not for the Office for Students, which has apparently already started to crack down on courses it deems to be low quality. Who are these people? Let students decide what courses they want and pay the whole whack back.
OK, all right, so I'll come back to you on that. But, Adam, do you think that we stigmatise people who go and get a practical trade or go straight into the workplace at 18?
I think there's a lot of snobbery in that. I mean, some of my most successful friends, and I'm talking multi-millionaires, are people that started at 16 or 18 from the bottom, learnt their trade, either stayed with the companies, are now very high up in those companies, or they started their own companies or firms in their 20s. I've got some really successful friends that have worked from nothing. Now, what scares me about universities, I wouldn't want my kids anywhere near them at the moment, with, you know, some of these deranged lecturers and teachers that are spreading so much nonsense, filling their heads, almost indoctrinating them with this left-wing nonsense and woke nonsense. So it would scare me, you know. But we've seen movements of anti-Semitism, anti-capitalism, climate nutters, and everything coming out of these universities, and it's almost like they are spoiled brats. Okay. Now, I want my boy, I want him to learn a trade, because I think there's going to be a shortage of tradesmen in the next few years.
Well, I mean, look, that is the argument to it. I mean, Rebecca, why should the taxpayer have to foot the bill for someone who wants to just go and do, you know, some kind of vanity degree, really, which is basically 3 years off at some no-mark university studying absolutely sweet FA, when they could actually be funding them to do something practical?
I think there's lots of reasons. So I did English literature, which is one of the degrees on that list. So apparently my degree should be a Mickey Mouse degree that's scrapped. I think there's lots of different kinds of success. I don't think that going to university to do English literature is the best way to make a lot of money, but it is a good way to be an interesting, perhaps more academically rigorous person. And we need both. We need people who have trades, and we need people who know a lot about the history of literature in this country. So having both is important, but what needs to not happen is that if you take away funding for degrees like history of art, that means that only people who have wealthy parents and who don't need to think, number one, about money, can go and do these things. And we should value learning for learning's sake, and intellectual rigorousness in this country should matter
Get
to
that,
us.
but it is the taxpayer who's paying for it. And that's the problem, isn't it? If someone comes out of university with £45,000 worth of debt, the taxpayer has given them that money. Why
You're bang on right, Patrick. This is the problem. Of course, it might be an extremely worthwhile way to spend 3 years learning about English literature. That's fine. I myself am thinking at some point of taking a master's degree in football, just because I'm interested in football. I'm under no illusions that this is going to turn me into a footballer or a football manager, and I would expect to pay for it myself.
Well, you can't get a student loan for a master's, so you would have to.
No, well, that's what. But I mean, let's say I want to do a BA in football studies. I should pay for it myself. If you want to have that experience, you should pay for it yourself. If the Labour Party win the next election, we're going to cut the voting age to 16. By the time you're 18, you should definitely be determining what sort of educational services you want, and you should be paying for them, possibly on a loan deal, but it doesn't require the Office for Students to get involved in it.
If there's no loan, people won't be able to do it. But realistically, we live a lot longer than we used to, so education should go longer. So, for instance, why can't you do a 3-year degree and then do an apprenticeship? We don't need to be treating people like we did when everybody retired
We don't need
at 60.
the taxpayer to fund
Let's just throw an umbrella over this policy, because this is now one of several high-profile policies that have hit the headlines so far this election campaign that involve the younger generation. We've got votes for 16-year-olds with Labour, we've got national service with the Tories, we also have this now from the Tories as well, which would affect 18 to, roughly speaking, 22-year-olds when it comes to university degrees. I suppose, Adam, the question is, from what you've seen so far, who do you trust most with our kids?
I don't trust either of them, as I've said many times, but I've got to say, the Conservatives scare me less than Labour. I think this is a good policy because I think it'll start getting the economy going from the bottom up where we need it and get more people in work and more grounded people as well. As you say, some students just go for the jolly up and to get that qualification. It doesn't mean they're going to get a job in anything.
Is this not rectifying a massive mistake that Tony Blair made?
No, I want them to have a jolly up. I think everyone, whether you will go to university or not,
for it.
I don't care. I'm delighted to pay for Jaeger bombs. People need time to grow and develop and change.
We can do that.
That's important.
But then, Rebecca, we can do
It is 3 years of snogging the wrong person and drinking Jaeger bombs. It's good for you. It helps you grow and develop.
I tell you what, individuals can put this on a crowdfunder and you can pay for it.
I would happily pay for somebody to do it. I will pay for my children to do it.
That's fine. You lob your money at that.
But my child shouldn't have better opportunities to have fun because I come.
I don't think I should be forced to pay for the activities that you've just enunciated.
I think you should. I think it makes a better country.
At the age of 18.
I have to pay for people's pensions and things I don't use. Why shouldn't you pay?
Honestly.
Don't you want happy, well-rounded
pension
people?
system as well. The idea that the taxpayer should pay for 18-year-olds to go around Jaeger bombing.
I'd rather pay for that than some pensioner with 2 houses.
Is it seriously the argument of the left in Britain at the moment that it's a more worthwhile endeavour to pay for the cannabis consumption of an 18-year-old at Bath Spa University than it is to pay for Marjorie, who's 86, at number 42, who can't turn her flipping heating on?
Not Marjorie. I think Marjorie needs it. But the kind of 2 home-owning pensioner, absolutely. I'd much rather pay for someone's kid to get pissed.
You've just sort of brought up a point there, is that the left would rather universities sort of stay and be busy because they are churning out left-wing students en masse.
So you're saying if you're more educated, you're more likely to be left-wing?
I'm saying universities indoctrinate many students into the left-wing
a lot of these degrees
thinking.
have about 3 contact hours a week, so if they're doing any indoctrination, they're doing a great job.
All right, we'll draw a line under that one for now. Time for the Great British Giveaway. Talking of free stuff, time for the Great British Giveaway. Now, today is your final chance to see how you could win an incredible £20,000 in cold, hard cash.
It's the final week to see how you can win a whopping £20,000 cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, as lines close tomorrow. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. tomorrow. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Still to come, has Reform's campaign turned into the Nigel Farage show? Their one and only MP, Lee Anderson, joins me live very soon to respond. But next, does anybody know what the hell is going on with Diane Abbott?
A decision has been taken to bar Diane Abbott.
Starmer can't seem to make his mind up on all of this, so we will do it for him. Should she be allowed to stand for Labour at this election? Tracy Miller goes head-to-head with former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan, and they're both in the studio, so don't move.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have government done enough, do you think, to actually help them out?
I think there will be occasions where people have tried to run a venture, whether it be a pub, a restaurant or anything sort of like that, in the hospitality sector, and it hasn't become commercially viable because of costs, because of bad accounting or because of bad business people. That is just a fact of life. That happens in every sector. So there will be pubs that are closing because they've been poorly run. But I do think there will be occasions where people are forced out of the market. So if local councils aren't being able to pass on business rates, for example, maybe central government can do more. It always tries to do more to cut beer duty and things like that to keep pubs going. So I don't think it's necessarily just as plain as what James is saying, is that, you know, bad pubs will just inevitably be falling by the wayside.
The idea that you two gentlemen, you raging capitalists, support the government stepping in to protect pubs seems to be particularly peculiar. If a pub isn't commercially viable, it has to be allowed to fail.
Well, Sadiq Khan, you know, he has a nighttime czar that he pays well over 100 grand.
Yes.
And businesses are going under like you wouldn't believe in London.
She's a real nightmare.
What's your point?
Well, the point is that Labour aren't exactly helping out these businesses, are they? So
I'm saying that pubs should not be protected by the state. I'm all for a pub.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we subsidise pubs.
Well, that has been suggested. That's what James May is railing against. Although I have to say, it's all very well for James May and presumably his very posh gastropub. But if a pub is not fit for purpose, and May makes this point, you know, you've got to have decent, clean loos and a clean pub. And also, realistically, in this day and age, you know, times change, you've got to put on some decent grub as well if you want it to survive. We can't have the government stepping in to save our pubs. And anyway, my understanding over the last 10, 20 years, as a percentage, we haven't lost that many pubs, so they're not going under anytime soon.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, why is Nigel Farage the face of reform when he's not even running as a candidate? Lee Anderson joins me next. But first, I mean, bizarrely, it's been the big story of the day, this. Should Diane Abbott be allowed to stand for the Labour Party? It's time now for the head-to-head. Well, Diane Abbott has tonight told a rally of her supporters that the Labour Party wants her blocked as a candidate, but she'll still stand for election in her constituency of Hackney North and Stoke Newington. It comes just hours after Sir Keir Starmer denied reports that Abbott would be barred from standing as a Labour candidate, branding them untrue and insisting that no decision had yet been reached over her future. Abbott was suspended from the party last year for claiming that Jewish people don't experience racism all their lives, remarks she did later apologise for. So tonight I am asking, should Diane Abbott have been allowed to stand for the Labour Party? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say. Tweet me at GBNews. Go and vote in our poll. But first, going head-to-head on this, are youth worker Tracy Miller and former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan. Tracy, I'll start with you on this. Should Diane Abbott be allowed to stand as a Labour candidate?
I think so, yes.
Go on, why?
In a nutshell, I think that she made a comment, which we all know about. It went everywhere. It wasn't just the Jews, though. It was it not
Irish travellers?
Right, so how comes that side of it wasn't highlighted? It's almost like it's just against Jews. I'm not racist. I don't discriminate against anyone, so I'm not saying I condone what she said or anything like that. But people make mistakes, and also it should be a case of, Diane, why did you say that? What was your perception? What made you come to that conclusion at the time? I don't think she's had the chance to dissect it and explain it. Anyway, however, she's retracted the statement. I think people can make mistakes. They can say things that are sometimes not the right thing to say. We're all human, and I think that she should be given another chance.
OK. All right, that's that side of it. Ivor, should Diane Abbott be allowed to stand as a Labour Party candidate in this changed Labour Party?
No.
Why not?
Is the simple answer. I think that the way that she dealt with it was too much, really. I think it was just, what she said was completely and utterly wrong. I think there are opportunities for other people. I mean, Diane has done a fantastic job. No one's denying that, for 32 years in Hackney. That's an incredible time as Member of Parliament. But maybe it is time for new blood in Hackney. I understand there are 3 very good candidates who've been around the Hackney area. 2 women of colour and 1 gay man. So there is obviously ability in Hackney, and I think Diane would do the best thing now for the Labour Party, which would be to call it a day and say, I've done my bit. And she has done her bit. OK. I mean, she has had quite a checkered past. She's made a few quite high-profile gaffes. She's also said things like Chairman Mao did more good than harm. And then there was this anti-Semitism scandal that, that followed. And it's not the first time she got into hot water with the Jewish community either. I mean, people do make mistakes, but something that can be regarded as racism, do you think people would normally be forgiven for that?
Naturally, no. It's not right for you to dislike someone because of the colour of their skin or their culture. You can't discriminate. You have to love everyone. And as a politician, you're going to represent a wide community, so you can't have those kind of views. But she has done 32 years. She has a wealth of experience. There's a lot she can still bring. And I just think that, what are we showing young people? If we've got this cancel culture where you do something wrong and you're just out, what are we teaching young people, that you make a mistake and you're finished?
A lot of cancel culture seems to come from the left, though. You know? Is this not, you reap what you sow?
I hear you, but I think she should be given another chance.
All right, fair enough. I perfectly talk to your view. Another one for this on is Keir Starmer's handling of this. I mean, that is very much the other side of this. Whatever anyone's views on Diane Abbott are, Keir Starmer has been hiding behind this notion that we will wait and see what this report says. And now it's emerged that the report into Diane Abbott was finished about 5 months ago. And here we are. I mean, this is terrible leadership, isn't it?
Well, this is happening in various places, I understand it. So, this is not unusual in these last, 6 or 7 days that the party has to get to its point of 650 candidates. I think on this one, I don't know the details, Patrick, on when this interview, when this was available. But what I do know is that Keir has to be operating within the rules that the party has. And I think that's what he's tried to do, trying to get over what happened in 17, 18 and 19.
This is another issue. It's Mr. Integrity, Mr. Forensic here, saying that he's going to, we've got to wait and see what this report says. If this report was out in December, then he's known all about it, and he's actually potentially thrown Diane Abbott under the bus here.
But do we actually know that? Because there's so many...
Come out and say, it's been treated as fact. This report was published in December, apparently.
Oh, OK. Well, I don't know. I haven't seen the actual report either. So, it's a difficult time. And look, I think this is a time when candidates themselves can make decisions, and because there are good people in Hackney, I think it is probably the right time for Diane to say, I've had a great time at 32 years, and, it's time to pass on to someone else.
All right, Tracy, is this a shameful way to treat the country's first black female MP?
I think so. Like I said, the comment she made wasn't great. She's retracted her statement. She's apologised for it. She has been in this position for years. Like I said, I think she's done a lot. I think we can agree that she's contributed a lot. Let her stand. If nobody votes for her, I think naturally she will feel within herself, maybe it's time to step down. Yeah, so, look, some of the arguments, and I will put this to you, some of the arguments about Diane Abbott being given, second chance or third chance or whatever you want to call it, is saying, look, that she deserves these chances because she is Britain's first black female MP. Should race really come into it there, do you think? Because that is a bit squiffy, isn't it? I mean, that's all... I don't know, it's almost a bit like positive discrimination, isn't it, in a way? I hear what you're saying. It's amazing that she's the first black MP. Labour MP, but I think it goes across the board for everyone. If this is the case, then let's keep that energy for every MP that says something wrong. Let's get rid of everyone then, if that's the case, because we're all human, we're all going to make mistakes. So let's keep this energy for every MP that says something wrong. OK, look, Keir Starmer's got a big issue at play here now. I think reading between the lines, there was probably a behind-the-scenes orchestrated attempt to, have a handshake and a goodbye to Diane Abbott. She has literally, as of right now, in Hackney and Stoke Newington, decided that that's not happening, right? So we are where we are. What Keir Starmer does in the next day or so is going to be really, really significant. He's been backed into a corner here by Diane Abbott, hasn't he, Ivor? He has to let her stand.
Well, the corner is the National Executive Committee. The corner isn't the leader of the Labour Party, but of course he will have maybe some view that he wants to put in terms of the NEC making a decision. And that's how the party operates. And that's what they will be trying to do over the next, 2 or 3 or 4 days. So, I mean, I think there is a process, and we should all, I think, say that's fine. I mean...
But they are letting, apparently, so Labour's Graham Jones, OK, will be allowed to stand as an MP. He initially was suspended, I believe, because he made some pretty shocking remarks, actually, in the wake of the October 7th attack, right?
Yeah.
So if he's being allowed to stand, that is a middle-aged white man, right? This is what the argument on the left of the party will say, and a lot of people will say.
I don't think it is about race, though, Patrick. I really don't. I don't think that's the right thing to say.
There's an article in The Guardian today. Labour's shocking treatment of Diane Abbott could alienate black voters for years to come. That's the Guardian's view. It will have a ripple effect.
We have, a number of black voters and black candidates, etc., etc., etc. I don't think race is the issue here. The issue is that Diane, 32 years, fantastic, but it's time to move on.
OK, all right. Do you think we will be reporting this time tomorrow that Diane Abbott is standing for the Labour Party?
Probably not.
Oh.
But it would be good if she could stand. And she was reinstated, so naturally Starmer must have dissected and spoke to her and said, what was that about? So for him to reinstate her, let her stand?
Go on, what do you think?
It's Thursday, isn't it?
Yes.
OK, I'm just checking.
I know,
I think you might have to wait till Friday.
OK. It's Wednesday. No, it's Wednesday. There you go. Hey, you see, we've all had a long election campaign already. Hey,
it's Wednesday now.
It's Wednesday now. All right, guys. Look, thank you very much for that. So, look, who do you agree with? OK, let's see what the polls are. Should Diane Abbott have been allowed to stand for the Labour Party? Robin on X says, why is Wes Streeting still being allowed to stand following his recent London mayoral comments? I'm sorry. Gemma says, it would be good if she stands as an independent and beats the Labour candidate. I wonder if, for Labour, that is one of the concerns, actually. Now your verdict is in. 27% of you think that Diane Abbott should be allowed to stand for Labour. 73% of you say she shouldn't. Look, coming up, junior doctors have announced a 5-day strike before the election. Shock horror. And Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting has already promised to meet them for negotiations. So, can Labour be trusted with the NHS? Are we going to get whopping great big pay rises and strikes? I sit down with Shadow Employment Minister Alison McGovern. That's happening very shortly, so don't move. But next, Nigel Farage continues to be a thorn in the Tories' side.
I'm not asking for anything other than I've done them some huge favours over the years as a party. Give me something back. We might have a conversation.
Is he about to cut a deal with the Tories here? And is he stealing the limelight from his Reform UK colleagues? I pose that to their one and only MP, Lee Anderson. And that's next.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be another showery day tomorrow. The showers will be much more focused across eastern areas and it should stay a bit drier across the west. That's as high pressure is slowly building in from the west, but in the east, low pressure is still in charge and that will continue to bring some pretty heavy outbreaks of rain to parts of southern Scotland, northeastern England through this evening. That's where there's a weather warning in force until the early hours of Thursday. Heavy rain will push into parts of Wales, possibly the southwest of England as well by tomorrow morning. So risks of outbreaks of heavy rain by tomorrow morning. A fairly mild night though, temperatures only dipping down as low as 11 or 12 degrees for many towns and cities. So a mild start to the day, but it will be quite a cloudy day and there will be some heavy rain around. Across the northeast of Scotland, actually it will turn much drier than it has been today through tomorrow morning. Some brightness across parts of the central belt as well, but elsewhere further south across Northern Ireland, Northern England as well, cloudy with a risk of some showery outbreaks of rain. It's particularly this band across central England into parts of Wales where it could be quite a wet start to the day. There's also a risk of some heavy showers breaking out across the south coast first thing. Some areas will stay dry and I think across the west it will get drier through the day as the rain becomes more focused across central and southeastern areas of England. Low pressure still not too far away from the east coast and that will be dragging in more in the way of cloud and onshore breeze as well. So that will bring a cooler feel tomorrow for many of us, but still in the sunshine, temperatures climbing up to the high teens. That's not too bad at all. It will still feel fairly pleasant. There'll be more in the way of sunshine to start the day on Friday, particularly across western areas. In the east, it's still going to be a fairly cloudy day with some outbreaks of rain that could turn heavy as we head into the afternoon. But signs of things improving for the weekend. Much more in the way of sunshine to come and temperatures climbing towards the low 20s.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is Patrick Christys Tonight. Coming up, I grill Labour's Alison McGovern on the party's grand plans to save our crumbling NHS. But first, we welcome Reform UK MP Lee Anderson. Now, despite not standing at the election, Reform's honorary president, Nigel Farage, is doing everything he can to push the party's election messaging to the nation. He's had a busy schedule booked in. He led a party press conference in Dover yesterday. He'll be appearing alongside Richard Tice at an immigration conference tomorrow and continuing on the campaign trail over the weekend. But Lee Anderson joins me now. Why is Nigel Farage the face of Reform when he's not even running, Lee?
Well, look, Patrick, you know that. Don't be so ridiculous. Nigel Farage has probably been the most influential politician in this country over the past 30 years or so. Look, I welcome the news that he's not standing, because I'll tell you why, Patrick. It means that he can come to places like Ashfield, like he is at the weekend, to campaign in my area to make sure that I get re-elected on July the 4th. This is great news for me. It's great news for Richard Tice, who is standing in Boston and Skegness. I want to see Nigel Farage all around the country, not just in one seat.
OK, all right. Are you not a bit put out, though, that they only want to talk to Nigel?
No, they want to talk to me. They want to talk to Richard. They want to talk to Ben Habib. Listen, Patrick, that's ridiculous journalism, by the way. You know, the people that contact me on a daily basis, I've got all the press, all the media from all over the country, including GB want to speak to me, want to speak to Nigel, want to speak to Ben, want to speak to Richard. It's not just Nigel. It's not just a one-man show. This is about reform. Reform all the party want to reform the country. The people of this country need an alternative to vote for. They're fed up to death of the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. They want an alternative.
There's an interesting thing doing the rounds today, Lee. So Richard Tice has told The Telegraph he's assembling a team of lawyers and KCs to fight Starmer's plan to apply VAT to private school fees, which he's branded discriminatory. So Tice says that stopping the charitable status of private schools, but not other charities, amounts to discrimination, as does applying VAT to private schools, but not universities. And the kicker is this, really. He says he's ready to use the ECHR to block the policy, despite that not being the biggest fans of our friends in Strasbourg. What do you make of Reform crawling over to the ECHR?
Well, Patrick, it's not. This is the irony of the ECHR, isn't it, really? You know, it's been our worst enemy, but, you know, in some parts, it can be our best friend, really.
You're making a case for it.
Exactly. This is the irony of the ECHR. It's so ridiculous that it could change a policy in our great country. But it's quite right, Richard is. You know, this is a spiteful policy. I used to work with men down the pit many, many years ago, doing a proper job, Patrick, which is alien to many people in this country, who would send their children to private school. These men would work 7 days a week down a coal mine to send their children to private school. These weren't rich men. These were just people who want the very best for their country. But this spiteful policy by the Labour Party will stop working class people sending their children to private school and get the very best education possible.
You don't think it just slightly undermined Reform's campaign if you go to the ECHR over something?
No, I think it's hilarious. I think it's absolutely hilarious that we can use something that we despise with a passion, and I despise the ECHR. It's absolutely hilarious that we use this ridiculous organisation to overtake decisions.
If you pulled out of it, if we were not in the ECHR now, then you wouldn't be able to do anything about this policy, would you?
Well, we could win an election, Patrick, couldn't we? That's what we need to do, win an election.
All right. Now, look, Nigel Farage has claimed that if the Tories give him something in return for his, quote, huge favours over the years, then an election deal might be on the cards. Should we just have a little listen?
You know what? I got rid of Mrs May with the Brexit Party. I stood aside for Boris to help a massive majority. What are they going to do back for me?
What would you like?
What are they going to do back for me?
Peerage?
No. I've turned all that rubbish down in the past. Don't worry.
What about Sir Nigel Farage?
No. I'm not asking for anything other than I've done them some huge favours over the years as a party. Give me something back. We might have a conversation.
Well, Lee, should you cut a deal with the Tories? Are you going to cut a deal with the Tories?
Absolutely not, Patrick. This is silly season. Yeah, in the next couple of days, we're going to enter the short campaign of the general election for this year. Nigel's teasing you. He's getting clicks on social media. He's getting clicks on GBNews. This is Nigel being mischievous at his very best. There are no deals to be made. Now, I can give you an exclusive now, Patrick, on GBNews. There's no way I would stand for Reform UK in the next election if there was any deals to be done with any party. That's a given.
So, all right. So, I mean, that is quite a bold claim to make, given that we have still got 5 and a bit weeks of an election campaign.
Well, there's a few days to go before I put my deposit in, Patrick. It's £500 for my deposit. And I'm telling you now, I will not stand for Reform UK if there's deals to be made.
OK, all right, well, look, OK, we will have to see what happens there. No doubt that is a shot across the bows to Richard Tice and co, isn't it? But when I have a little look as well at some of the things that have been doing the rounds recently, you know, Nigel on Trevor Phillips, and this is an issue that I think is close to your heart as well, because you were dogged with Islamophobia claims for a while. We spoke about them on air as well. Nigel, you know, faced quite a lot of serious allegations over it. He was simultaneously accused of being both anti-Semitic and Islamophobic, which many people would regard as being quite the achievement if both of those things were true. Do you think that there is a bit of a racism cloud hanging over reform?
No, absolutely not, Patrick. It's absolutely not. This is what the left in politics do all the time. When they start losing the debate on any single subject, they always play the race card. It's absolute nonsense. Nigel Farage, I know him quite well. I class him as a friend. He is not racist. I've been accused in the past of being racist and Islamophobic. As yet, nobody can provide a shred of evidence to prove that I was Islamophobic or racist or anything like that. It's absolute nonsense. They use this all the time, Patrick.
What do you make of Rishi Sunak refusing to debate Nigel Farage? Again, some people said, well, look, what right does Nigel have to offer it out and when he's not actually standing? I mean, it would be quite a bizarre thing to do, wouldn't it? I do wonder if that is an aspect where Nigel has cost himself here, because if he was standing, then he's got more of a case to actually debate these people. Now they can just brush him away, can't they?
Well, I think as a Prime Minister, Patrick, he should be prepared and brave enough to debate anybody. And Nigel is a real threat. You know, when it comes to debating in public, there's nobody better in this country. Richard's got a fair point in that there's probably only him and Sir Keir Starmer that can be the PM, you know, in 5 weeks' time. But, you know, the public, the great British public, would love to see a debate with Nigel Farage, with Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer. They would love that, especially if it was on GBNews.
Well, yeah, I mean, watch this space. Look, absolutely. And look, just to come back quickly on this, I know we focused a bit on the ECHR when it came to the private school stuff. I did see this legal action, and I just wondered, you know, does that really resonate with a lot of Reform voters? You know, seriously, does it actually really resonate? You know, the idea that Reform, you know, is kind of the party of the working man, the person that's been sidelined left, right and centre, you know, the person who's been forgotten about, oh, we're going into bat for posh kids.
Well, listen, Patrick, I can honestly say in the donkey's years, I've been knocking on doors for three political parties, that private schools has never, ever come up on the doorstep. But it is an aspiration of working class people up and down the country to send their kids to the very best school. And this policy of the Labour Party puts that at risk.
OK, look, Lee, thank you very, very much. That is Lee Anderson. There is the Reform UK MP, and always a good sport, Lee. Thank you very, very much. Right, OK, look, coming up, as West Streeting cops it for the Diane Abbott debacle.
Do you feel comfortable about what's happened here with Diane Abbott?
No, not particularly. I think this has gone on for a very long time, but...
Could this become a major issue for the Labour Party? My panel are going to talk about that at 10. What on earth does Keir Starmer do here? Does he risk alienating the left? Does he risk saying that he's not a changed Labour Party? I want to know whether or not Diane Abbott did actually complete that anti-Semitism awareness course. It makes it sound like she was caught speeding, doesn't it? But next, Mr Streeting also said that he's the man to save Britain's crumbling NHS. Do you believe him? And, well, it's especially important because we are about to see junior doctors' strikes and medic strikes right in the run-up to the general election. Some would say those are politically motivated. But what are the Labour Party going to do about it, especially when the leader of the Unite Union, apparently one of Labour's biggest union donors, has said that their plans for workers' rights have more holes than a Swiss cheese? So what actually would strike action look like under the Labour Party? Labour frontbencher Alison McGovern makes the case for her party's plan, and that's straight after this.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Apparently alcohol abuse is costing England £27 billion a year. I mean, in fairness, that's the price of 2 rounds in London, Nicholas.
Yeah, tell me about it. Not that I'm a big consumer of alcohol. I'm very Mediterranean in my consumption. But revealed, alcohol abuse costs soar to £27 billion a year. So This cost basically encompasses a variety of aspects, from health-related problems, so the cost on the NHS, lack of productivity, people who lose their jobs, social services, and all that. And of course, it has been on the rise, 37% more compared to last time this was studied in 2003. So now Institute of Alcohol Studies and some other groups are pushing or asking for tougher taxes and tougher regulation. But is that the solution? Like in ancient Rome, they said, in medium stat virtus, like moderation, virtue is in moderation. And again, if they're going to raise the price, people like myself or yourself who are moderate consumers, pardon?
You're going to turn to heroin. Because it'll become... I mean, well, this is what's happened in Scotland.
It becomes unaffordable, so...
Yeah, in Scotland, they had minimum unit alcohol pricing, and so it pushes up the cost of getting off your tree for your average Scottish ne'er-do-well who likes to sit on a bus stop and drink a bottle of cider. So instead, they're turning to street drugs, which are cheaper by comparison.
That is just terrible. I like that the alcohol industry have come back on this. A guy called Matt Lambert, who's the chief executive of the Portman Group, and they represent the alcohol industry. And he says that the IAS, that's the group who've created this, have failed to take into account the significant direct economic contribution of the alcohol industry to the wider economic and social benefits of moderate and responsible alcohol consumption. Well, it's so true, isn't it? We've got a declining birth rate. We need people to get drunk and chat each other up.
Yeah.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other. Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it? He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. We are only on GB News. Now, coming up, has the Labour Party lost its identity in their treatment of Diane Abbott? How can they simultaneously be the party of Natalie Elphicke but not Diane Abbott? It's bizarre, isn't it? But first, Labour's Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has today outlined his party's plans to clear NHS waiting lists within 5 years. Shall we have a little look at what he had to say?
40,000 more appointments in our NHS every week through extra evening and weekend clinics, £1.1 billion directly into the pockets of NHS staff so that we can get those waiting times down, to get those waiting lists down. And we will double the number of diagnostic scanners because it is outrageous that so many people, 1.6 million in our country, are waiting in anguish and anxiety for those diagnostic tests and scans.
But that pledge came on the same day as junior doctors announced another 5-day strike, with the walkout set to begin on the 27th of June, timed, yes, you guessed it, in time for the general election. The last junior doctors' strike in February resulted in more than 90,000 appointments and operations being cancelled or postponed. And with Labour insisting they won't meet the junior doctors' 35% pay increase demand, questions have been raised now as to how they can eliminate that NHS backlog whilst strikes remain ongoing. Well, I'm joined again by my panel whilst we wait for our friend from the Labour Party to join us. Is Director of Popular Conservatives Mark Littlewood, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, author and journalist Rebecca Reid. I'll start with you, Mark, on this. I mean, there is a serious fear, is there not, that the Labour Party would have to cave in to things like the BMA, etc., if they want to actually get anything done?
Yeah, I mean, a 35% pay demand is a bit rich, isn't it? I mean, my own view is that people should be rewarded for their productivity. And in general, in the public sector, we're seeing productivity fall. So you wouldn't expect to see wages rise. Where Wes Streeting might be as cunning as a fox here, Patrick, is he said waiting lists, we'll get waiting lists down. We'd expect them to fall naturally. There's such a backlog still from COVID when we didn't do, cancer screening and all the rest of it. But as time passes, the waiting lists will fall from their horrific level to something slightly less horrific. What he's not yet addressing is the NHS system is broken, pretty much the worst healthcare system anywhere in Western Europe. We've got to change it fundamentally to actually improve outcomes.
All right, guys, look, thank you very, very much. I will come back to you, but I've just been informed that our guest is now ready to go, which is great stuff. So, Labour has today accused Rishi Sunak of making reckless and unfunded election promises that they claim could cost the taxpayer a whopping £71 billion in borrowing and a 2.5% hike in interest rates. So I'm very pleased to say I'm joined now by Labour's Shadow Employment Minister, it's Alison McGovern. Thank you very much for joining us. Great to have you on the show. So, I mean, you are desperately trying to convince the country that you're the party of economic competence then, are you?
Well, we are the party that is offering funded plans to improve our public services. And we are the party that has put forward, as well as our missions that show the direction that we want to take the country in if we are lucky enough to be elected. We've set out 6 first steps, and economic stability is the first of those steps. Unfortunately, the country knows only too well what happens when you make unfunded tax promises, because that's what Liz Truss did, and it led to real turbulence in our economy that most British families could ill afford to be repeated.
OK, all right, look, now, yesterday, Labour had to retract some of the names of their business leaders' endorsements. It emerged that some of them had dormant companies. One of them had their leaving due last week. And then you guys very kindly sent over a press release here about Labour's economic competence. We have read out some of the details there. But I can't help but notice one of the people that's quoted in this is a chap called Jonathan Portes, who's an anti-Brexit, pro-mass migration, left-leaning academic who wants a massive expansion of the welfare state. Are we sure we can trust your numbers on this?
Well, I mean, firstly, all the numbers are laid out in the press release. Secondly, I mean, Jonathan's not here to defend himself. And I think that most neutral observers would say that he is a qualified economist. I mean, without trading qualifications with you live on television, he's a very well-qualified economist. So the most important thing on economic stability and making sure that good decisions are made on the economy is taking transparent decisions, having them be thoroughly looked at by the OBR, again, which Liz Truss failed to do. So it's the way that you take economic decisions that build in that stability in the economy, and that's what Rachel Reeves has been doing out, transparently showing how we'll fund our promises and setting out the principles by which we will take economic decisions.
All right, I mean, look, on education, which is going to have a big economic consequence here, obviously the Labour's plan on VAT with private schools there. I mean, Treasury analysis last week found that if the policy forced 100,000 pupils out of private schools, then it would require the government to spend an extra 650 million quid a year. Apparently, the latest info we've got is that 250,000 kids could be dumped into the state sector. I mean, would this not be an economic disaster?
Well, I question your use of the word dumped there. I think state schools are very good. They could do with some extra teachers. That's why one of our 6 first steps is to get 6,500 extra teachers into our state schools to help support the teachers that are already there doing a good job. You mentioned that was Treasury analysis. It actually is the assumptions given to Treasury economists by Conservative special advisors. So I don't really...
There are also 8 local authorities who say they are full. There are no school places available there. I mean, are we actually going to be able to accommodate all of these people, do you think? This is kids' lives we're talking about.
That's right. And I think that I think that the state schools will be able to deal with any situation going forward. And forgive me if I have a little bit of scepticism about some of the sources for that information that you have mentioned. We want to have extra teachers in our state schools, and we want to make sure we've got enough places for children in state schools. We've actually had falling rolls in some areas, which is a different problem to manage. So we want to make sure that we've got good schools with a really excellent curriculum with English and maths and creative subjects all included. And I think, if I'm honest, I think that a lot of the commentary is not quite right. You know, I think they described Bridget, our shadow education person, as chippy because she thought it was a good thing, you know, to have good state schools for people to go to. So I think the vast majority of pupils, is it 93% of children in our state schools, would recognise that the big need is to get extra teachers in, and we're going to do that by people paying VAT on private school fees, which I think most people would expect that to happen.
But you know, can you actually guarantee there's going to be enough places for those kids to go? Because it's interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, during the whole Brexit discussion where, you know, Labour took a position on Brexit, they were saying, look, you know, you don't know what you're voting for here with Brexit. You don't know what you're going to get. And a lot of the commentary on this, when it comes to the education policy, a flagship Labour policy, appears to be, I'm sure it'll be all right.
That's not the case. I've set out already that we are planning to invest more in our schools, not just 6,500 extra teachers, but also, you know, reform and a curriculum review to make sure kids are learning the right things. And also in every primary school, making sure that there's a breakfast club there, so that not only so that children can start the day with a good, healthy breakfast, but also making sure that their parents have got the option of starting a job that begins at 9 a.m. So we've got a good plan for our schools. It's costed, and I think that there's lots of parents out there who just want to see investment in schools and their children, you know, feeling confident and happy when they're at school. That's the big issue here. And we've set out, as you said, how we're going to fund that. OK,
now, look, medics are saying that they're going to go on strike as the election happens. Wes Streeting appears to have left the door open to some discussion, as you would expect, obviously, and potential pay rises there may be. I'm intrigued at the Unite Union, which is one of Labour's biggest union donors, I believe, saying that Labour's current plans for workers' rights have more holes than a Swiss cheese. So what does this mean, really, for Labour's relationships with the unions going forward? Can we expect more strikes, do you think, under a Labour government?
Our plan for workers' rights and for improving people's working lives we've worked on them since 2021 with colleagues in business and colleagues in trade unions. And we've set out a number of very important things. For example, ending exploitative zero-hours contracts, giving people rights from day one. Those are important things because at the moment, flexibility too often at work is all on one side. It's on workers' shoulders. And I think that lots of people want to see, you know, the quality of people's working life improved. I think that there'll be many trade unionists across the country that are keen and enthusiastic to fight for that package as we go into the election.
OK, all right, and just lastly with you, look, this Diane Abbott fiasco, it just seemed odd that the Labour Party at the moment is more comfortable with people like yourself sitting alongside Natalie Elphicke than Diane Abbott. What's going on?
Well, Keir said today that no decision has been taken to bar Diane. She had to go through disciplinary process because of a letter she wrote, which is difficult for everybody, given that she's first black woman in Parliament and a Labour MP. And, you know, we're at the beginning of a snap election. There's a process of confirming all of our candidates, and that's happening now.
Look, Alison, thank you very, very much for your time this evening. Yes, Alison McGovern there is Labour's Shadow Employment Minister. Well, look, we are now one full week of election campaigning in, aren't we? And to celebrate, we have compiled some of the highlights for you.
Looking forward to all the football?
Not so much my bag.
Well...
If me resigning as an MP now would bring the ceasefire, I would do it. I would do it.
I'm enjoying this, honestly.
It's now bang on 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
no decision has been taken to bar Diane Abbott.
Labour chaos over Diane Abbott.
Do you feel comfortable about what's happened here with Diane Abbott?
No, not particularly. I think this has gone on for a very long time, but...
Should she be allowed to stand for Labour and... What the heck are the Lib Dems playing at? Also,
I've been a centrist Conservative all my life, but I think the party's really changed, and I think the last 14 years has done real damage to the country.
Can you spot what's wrong with that clip? Plus, why has Rishi Sunak copped it for this, I wonder? Also,
people were chanting death to America. Some people were, not everyone, but some people were.
you won't believe what a prominent Muslim figure has to say on that. On my panel this evening is the director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, activist and landlord Adam Brooks, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Oh, yes, OK. Now, what is in these balloons? There's no prizes for the winner, but guess anyway. What was in that balloon? Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Labour's Diane Abbott chaos just got even weirder. Next.
Your news at just after 10 o'clock. Labour veteran Diane Abbott is fighting back tonight. She's vowed to be the MP for Hackney North and Stoke Newington in London for as long as possible. She told a rally of local supporters in East London tonight that she'll always stand with them. As you've been hearing, Sir Keir Starmer said earlier on today Labour hadn't taken any decision to bar her from standing as a Labour MP. And Jeremy Corbyn has launched his campaign today to be re-elected as the independent MP for Islington North. The launch is being hosted at a community centre which was officially opened by the politician in 2018 as part of a social housing project. He's vowed to be an independent voice for equality, democracy and peace. The Prime Minister's been hitting out today at plans by junior doctors to stage another round of strikes next month. Members of the British Medical Association are going to walk out for 5 days, starting from the 27th of June. Speaking this afternoon, Rishi Sunak said it was politically motivated action and not in the interests of patients or staff.
Today's action by the junior doctors, on the same day as the Labour Party are having a health day, does slightly ponder the question as to whether this is politically motivated. It's hard to escape that conclusion given the timing and to call a strike in an election campaign, especially as we found a constructive resolution with the remainder of the NHS workforce.
Rishi Sunak. Well, NHS waiting list targets would be met within 5 years of a Labour government, according to a pledge by Sir Keir Starmer today. The plan would see an additional 40,000 appointments in England each week, making use of time during the evenings and at weekends and bringing waiting times down to within the 18-week target. The Conservatives have called it copy and paste politics and pointed instead to their plan to invest in NHS technology. The owners of Royal Mail have agreed to a £3.5 billion takeover bid by Czech millionaire Daniel Kretinsky. The deal will see the continuation of one price goes anywhere first-class post 6 days a week. The company's branding will also remain, as will its UK headquarters. But the sale has attracted heavy criticism from senior politicians and unions amid concerns over the future of the Royal Mail service in the UK. And GB News can reveal that environmental activists plan to target the UK's busiest airports this summer. In fact, over the last 2 weeks of July. Just Stop Oil plans to target airports, including Heathrow and Gatwick, at the height of the British summer getaway. They say in order to cause maximum disruption. The group's also running a series of online courses aimed at encouraging and informing volunteers on how best to carry out a protest. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, the Labour Party's campaign hit its first major bump in the road today. It's all about Diane Abbott. Miss Abbott was suspended from the Labour Party in April 2023 amid a racism and anti-Semitism scandal. Talking about Jewish people, the Irish and travellers, she said they undoubtedly experience prejudice. This is similar to racism, and the two words are often used as if they were interchangeable. It is true that many types of white people with points of difference, such as redheads, can experience this prejudice, but they are not all their lives subject to racism. She lost the Labour whip, they launched an investigation, and the line from Labour was that we'd have to wait and see what the result of that was before they'd made a decision about Diane.
There seems to be room for Natalie Elphicke down in Dover, but not Diane Abbott up here in London. Can you welcome Diane Abbott back to your happy fold?
Well, look, Diane is going through a process, Nick, as you know, in relation to the investigation of an issue relating to her. That's not finally resolved yet.
But now Sir Keir Starmer is accused of lying about this. It's emerged that investigation apparently finished in December last year. So she was given a warning and told to attend a 2-hour anti-Semitism awareness course, reportedly. So why would he potentially lie about it? Yesterday, the initial noise was that Diane Abbott had been booted out of the Labour Party. Then reports said she'd been accepted back in and got the whip back. Then they said she wouldn't be standing as a candidate, and now it looks like she will be standing. It's a circus. Here's the latest from the Labour leader.
No, that's not true. No decision has been taken to bar Diane Abbott. The process that we were going through ended with the restoration of the whip the other day. So she's a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party, and no decision has been taken barring her.
Here's what Wes Streeting had to say about it.
Do you feel comfortable about what's happened here with Diane Abbott?
No, not particularly. I think this has gone on for a very long time, but, you know, I'm here this morning to talk about the NHS waiting lists and what we do about them.
Do you think she's owed...
And I say this with enormous respect for everything that Diane has achieved in politics, and I have a great deal of respect for what she's achieved in politics, actually.
Well, here was Diane Abbott's initial reaction. She said, naturally, I am delighted to have the Labour whip restored and to be a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party. Thank you to all those who supported me along the way. I will be campaigning for a Labour victory, but I'm very dismayed that numerous reports suggest I have been barred as a candidate. And the whole thing took another twist this afternoon when it emerged that Labour's Graham Jones will be allowed to stand as a Labour MP. He famously said this.
In Israel again, no British person should be fighting for any other country at all, full stop. It's against the law and you should be locked up.
In case you missed that there, he was saying that anyone who left Britain to go and fight for the Israeli Defence Force should be, quote, locked up. But the left-wing press hasn't been too kind to Sir Keir Starmer over this. A headline here from The Guardian reads, Labour's shocking treatment of Diane Abbott could alienate black voters for years to come. Well, and the breaking news earlier on this evening, addressing a crowd outside Hackney Town Hall, Diane Abbott has vowed to be the MP for Hackney North and Stoke Newington, quote, as long as it is possible. Was there an attempt to stage-manage Diane Abbott's exit from the Labour Party? If so, it has gone catastrophically wrong. But the big question is this. Should Diane Abbott be allowed to stand at this election as a Labour candidate? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. It's the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. I've got landlord and activist Adam Brooks. And I've got author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Mark, I'll start with you. You know, how can Labour be fine with Natalie Elphicke and then have Diane Abbott potentially not standing? I mean, should she be allowed to stand as a Labour candidate?
Well, that is a decision for the Labour Party. What I find absolutely gobsmacking here, Patrick, you read out her supposedly offensive letter in The Guardian. I think it was offensive. That was 13 months ago. That is the totality of the evidence. There's no DNA samples to collect. You don't need to pretend you're playing forensic detectives. This isn't an episode of NSIS. They should have been able to make a decision within 24 hours on whether they were going to kick her out of the party. There's no more evidence to look at. 13 months on, and a general election a few weeks away, they still can't decide. She can, of course, run as an independent, but, I mean, Keir Starmer can't seem to make a decision.
Well, on this, I'm just getting this in my ear now. Apparently, there's been another development recently, a few minutes ago, to me. Jeremy Corbyn's backed her, I believe. Well, shock horror, but there we go. Let's have a look.
There are thousands of people outside Hackney Town Hall in support of Diane Abbott. Obviously, I'm not there with her, but I've sent a message of support because democracy within parties as well as within communities is a very important part of our lives.
So that's at Jeremy Corbyn's campaign launch, which is taking place this evening. Rebecca, I put it to you, it's not the best look for the Labour leader, is it? If he's got Jeremy Corbyn saying, oh, come on, you need to bring Diane back, and then he does bring Diane back.
Well, also, if I was battling an anti-Semitism allegation, the last person I want defending me would be Jeremy Corbyn. I think that the comms on this have been really bad, and I'm very disappointed because I think they have done brilliant work thus far on purging anti-Semitism from the party, but unfortunately, I think there's a lot of love for her. I think she's done a lot of good things, and they're letting that blind them to the fact that if you say something that's stupid, you have to go.
OK. Adam, your views on whether or not Diane Abbott should be allowed to stand as a Labour MP?
Of course she shouldn't. If she had said those things about Muslims instead of Jews, she would never be welcomed back into the Labour Party. That's the fact. Now, she said so many terrible things, race-baiting things over the years. I can't believe she's being lauded. Who cares that she's a woman of colour? That doesn't bother me. What colour she is or what gender she is, she shouldn't get away with a lot of the things that she's got away with. For me, 2019, there's two reasons Labour got trounced. You know, one was Jeremy Corbyn and the population was scared stiff of him, and the other was the fault of her as Home Secretary.
Well,
she's laughable.
What has she said that was race-baiting previously?
She said many things in 2012.
Well, it was precisely the letter in The Guardian.
I agree with that.
In 2012, she insinuated that black cab drivers were racist and that they weren't picking up black passengers. The list goes on.
Are there not studies to suggest that it is harder to get a cab as a black person?
Oh, come off it, Rebecca.
There are.
Please.
That's not to say they're all racist. Of course they're not.
Please do not defend her race-baiting over the years. Diane Abbott has said so many divisive things.
She did insinuate that West Indian mothers care more about their children than...
in defence of her sending her children to private schools, that she mocked people for doing so and that they shouldn't be in existence. So she's a hypocrite as well as a race baiter as well.
Rebecca, well, it's obviously, Rebecca, I mean, she said things as well like Mao did more good than harm.
I'm not with her on that at all, but I suppose, Boris Johnson called black people pickaninnies with watermelon smiles and said that women wearing burqas are like letterboxes. People do say stupid things sometimes. I think the problem is she's not consistently on message. She has also, to me, a bigger issue is that she's so often got her figures wrong. I think that she has done a huge amount of good for Hackney and she's been a fantastic MP, but she is no longer serving the party.
Maybe she should be a councillor instead of an MP.
I'm not sure what good has she done?
I think on the sort of like grassroots basis, she's a much loved MP and she's been re-elected how many times? 5, 6?
Like I would thought any Labour candidate.
Everybody who lives there.
Labour will hold that seat, whoever the candidate.
No, but I'm not
yet aware. I mean, I'm not picking on her particularly, but I'm not yet aware of her stunning achievements in policy reform.
I think she's just considered to be an incredibly good MP and much loved by her constituents, which is a decent achievement.
I mean, everybody's lauding these great policy achievements that she's achieved over 37 years. Not sure what they are.
Of the 37 years.
Other than being one of the key people who led Labour to a disastrous defeat.
Her party's been in opposition for almost all of the time.
There is another aspect to this, which is Keir Starmer's leadership on this. Now, if it is the case that he has actually lied about when this report was finished and when he knew about it and everything, how on earth can we trust him to run a country if he can't even manage Diane Abbott?
I mean, has he lied? Has he said that the report wasn't finished in December?
He kept saying he's going to wait for the results of this report, wait for the results of this report.
There might be addendums
and then it broke last night that apparently that report was finished.
My guess is that if there is this course she's supposed to go on, that course hasn't been done yet, and that was what was going to be the thing that put the full stop on the end of it. Now, I don't think you can have a 2-hour course that makes you not racist or not anti-Semitic. I think if you express those, it takes more than 2 hours. But I imagine that's probably their logic.
Exactly. I think when you think about it, an anti-Semitism awareness course.
It's feeble, Patrick. Look, I mean, they should have been able to take a decision within 24 hours
on this particular case. With Lloyd Russell Moyle, who's been suspended...
But on this case, why has it taken 13 months and the leader of the Labour Party and our presumptive Prime Minister still doesn't know what the conclusion is? We've also got the Shadow Chancellor saying she can't present a budget for 10 weeks because she wants the OBR to write it for her. If we elect the Labour Party on July the 4th, is this procrastination and inability to make any sort of decision going to be the standard operating procedure of our next government?
No, come on, there have been plenty of other people who have been dismissed for inappropriate behaviour. He has got rid of other people.
So why is this taking 13 months?
Suspended because she's much loved, and I think they're trying. It's politics within politics.
I think it's
much love.
It's pretty obvious that there's many factions of the Labour Party and there's infighting going on. But it would take a spectacular chaos for them to lose this election.
Okay. And it's not going to be on this, is it?
All right. Now, look, coming up, can you spot what's wrong with this? In a second now.
I've been a centrist Conservative all my life, but I think the party's really changed, and I think the last 14 years has done real damage to the country.
Right, I will reveal all in my press pack, and I will also have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press. But first, Ed Davey continued this bizarre action-packed election campaign with a bike ride in Wales. But aside from headline-grabbing stunts, do the Lib Dems actually have any policies? You'll find out when I'm joined by former Lib Dem Minister Norman Baker next.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first-language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural. So, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him for go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling them of that. At least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And,
so, Gareth,
Sarah Cymraeg speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so, Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh Government are trying to, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And I'm not
what? If I was Welsh, if I were Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Still to come, tonight's panel will be whizzing you through the very first of tomorrow's front pages. Every day this week, we have had a new policy on one of the front pages, so stay tuned. But first, I welcome former Liberal Democrat Minister Norman Baker, and the Lib Dems launched their Welsh election campaign a little earlier today, with their leader, Ed Davey, continuing his action-packed schedule of falling off paddleboards and skidding down hill on bicycles and just doing stuff like that. I thought he was going to smash through that orange wall himself then for a second. But,
Well, we're getting a fantastic response from voters. When we're knocking on people's doors, people are really clear. They want the Conservatives out. And in so many areas, they know a Liberal Democrat vote can do that. They like what we're saying on the health service, on the economy, on the environment. They like our local candidates. So we're increasingly positive about our chances across the UK.
yeah, Norman, look, some people would just say the Lib Dems are parading Ed Davey around like the village idiot. I mean, what are his policies?
Well, there's a huge number of policies, and we're accused of having too many policies normally. I mean, it's referred to the NHS. We want to make sure that people can have access to a GP appointment within 7 days. We want to make sure the waiting lists are cut. Those two things are terribly important for people. We want to make sure there's a proper integration between health and social care, which doesn't happen in this country. We want to make sure that there's proper attention to the environment, not least of all the appalling sewage problems which are being created in this last few years, and which the Tories have done nothing about.
He was swimming in Windermere yesterday.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know about Ed falling off a board, but I hope he wasn't falling into any water from Thames Water or Southern Water, because
that was why I thought it was slightly bizarre, because previously the Lib Dems have banged on about the sewage in Windermere, and then he went swimming in it.
Well, I mean, there is a problem with sewage, there's no doubt about that. There's a problem because water companies are paying themselves and their shareholders far too much and not investing the money to tidy up the environment. So we need to make sure that Ofwat's abolished and replaced by something more fit for purpose. There are more local community involvement with water companies and with sewage discharges than presently has been the case.
So what does that look like in reality? And I will just put it to you, actually, when we see images that we were seeing on the screen there of Ed Davey frolicking about. I mean, do you think the victims of the post office scandal are enjoying seeing him prance around the country?
Well, look, I mean, to be fair to Ed, there's been a whole succession of post office ministers going back 20 years. He's just one of many. So it's a bit unfair to pick on him as an individual post office minister. Should he have done more? Maybe. But so should all the other post office ministers.
Maybe or definitely yes.
Well, maybe he should have done. I'm not familiar with the details. But look, there's been post office ministers in the Labour government and Tory ministers, so it's a bit unfair to pick on him.
But he didn't do anything about it, did he? Well, and now he is the leader of a party, and now he is asking you for your vote, and there is irrelevance.
I don't think it's true that he did nothing about it. He might have done more. I don't know. I wasn't involved in that because I was either at the Home Office or DFT.
He ignored it as far as everything, the evidence is. He ignored the post office. You know, we've simultaneously got this post office inquiry going on with Paula Vennells crying her guts out and people standing outside there saying my life has been ruined, etc. And you've got him riding a bike and doing wheelies in Wales.
Look, I'm not an expert on the post office issue, but I'm just saying to you that the post office issue goes back decades, and he's one of many 10 or 20 post office ministers in that time.
OK. I had a little look at the Lib Dem website earlier on, because I was desperately, trying to get hold of some policies here. A fair, prosperous and innovative economy that promotes opportunity. A flourishing environment with fair access to nature for all. A strong United Kingdom, a fair international order, a truly fair democracy where everyone's rights are respected. I mean, look, to be fair, that is meaningless guff, isn't it?
Well, there's headlines. I mean, there's a lot more beyond it. The manifesto, we're always accused of putting out something which is far too big, and I hope we won't have something too big this time because all the detail will be there. But there's headlines you've read out. That's nothing wrong with the headlines.
So we are going to have to wait for a proper manifesto. That is fair enough, of course, and we do await not just the Lib Dem's manifesto, frankly, everybody's manifesto, and we'll be looking for that. Coalition. What would your demands be? Do you think you'll end up in coalition with anyone?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we got our fingers burnt last time, to be honest with you. I think the last coalition worked rather well, actually, and if you look back at the Tory policies and Tory governments in 2015, they've been disastrous. The most sensible, stable government we've had in this country for 20 years was a coalition government between the Tories and Lib Dems, actually. So there's nothing wrong with coalition government, but we suffered greatly because the public didn't really like us doing that. So I don't think we'll be doing that again, but it's not my call. What I do think, however, is there's a possibility of a hung parliament, but it's more likely, if you believe the bookies, that it'll be a Labour majority. What is very clear, Patrick, is that the electorate's following an ABC policy, anyone but Conservatives, and they're looking desperately for whoever can beat the Tories in their particular seat. And whereas Boris Johnson was able to keep the blue wall intact and win the red wall from Labour, what's happening now is the red wall's going back to Labour by and large, and the blue wall's going to fall to the Lib Dems. I don't know if you saw the opinion poll in Godalming and Ash, which is Jeremy Hunt's seat, Chancellor Exchequer.
He's in trouble by looks of
He's in trouble. We're on 35%, the Tories were on 29%, and that's being reflected across the south. You see John Redwood standing down now. A whole lot of MPs, even Hugh Merriman, who's a good minister, by the way, standing down in Bexhill and Battle. You know, they're all departing the sinking ship.
Is there something, though, to be said for the idea that The Lib Dems only really appeal to people in big houses in Surrey who wish that we'd never left the EU and, you know, are all quite lucrative lobby types like Hugh Grant.
I don't think that's true. I mean, I think obviously people who voted Remain will be sympathetic to the Lib Dems, but that's not what we're...
What is the Lib Dem policy on the EU, by the way, at the moment?
Well, I mean, we're accepting that we've left. I mean, that's what it is. We want closer relations with our European colleagues across the Channel, which is only sensible, not least of all for the migration issues. But, I mean, we've accepted we've left. But, no, to answer your question, there are a whole range of people who want to vote Lib Dem. There are people who believe in the environment, people who want decent public services, people who want to make sure that people pay their taxes properly, people who want to make sure that we follow our international order and don't break international law, and also we punch our weight in the world, which we're not doing at the moment. I mean, it's criminal, for example, that the government's not funding BBC World Service properly. That's soft power. They're neglecting.
So a Lib Dem policy would be to fund the BBC more?
Well, BBC World Service had to be funded more, certainly.
Interesting. All right, OK, Norman, thank you very, very much. That is Norman Baker there, former Lib Dem Minister. Thank you very much for coming in. Great to see you. And I believe we'll be seeing you later in the week, actually. Anyway, coming up, what's wrong with this video put out by the Labour Party?
I've been a centrist Conservative all my life, but I think the party's really changed, and I think the last 14 years has done real damage to the country.
Yes, and we'll reveal what that's all about. But next, I've got a very first look for you at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And like I said, every day this week, we've had a policy on the front pages. So, hang on, I'll see you the other side of this.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be another showery day tomorrow. The showers will be much more focused across eastern areas, and it should stay a bit drier across the west. That's as high pressure is slowly building in from the west, but in the east, low pressure is still in charge, and that will continue to bring some pretty heavy outbreaks of rain to parts of southern Scotland, northeastern England through this evening. That's where there's a weather warning in force until the early hours of Thursday. Heavy rain will push into parts of Wales, possibly the southwest of England as well by tomorrow morning. So risks of outbreaks of heavy rain by tomorrow morning. A fairly mild night though, temperatures only dipping down as low as 11 or 12 degrees for many towns and cities. So a mild start to the day, but it will be quite a cloudy day and there will be some heavy rain around. Across the northeast of Scotland, actually it will turn much drier than it has been today through tomorrow morning. Some brightness across parts of the central belt as well, but elsewhere further south across Northern Ireland, Northern England as well, cloudy with a risk of some showery outbreaks of rain. It's particularly this band across central England into parts of Wales where it could be quite a wet start to the day. There's also a risk of some heavy showers breaking out across the south coast first thing. Some areas will stay dry, and I think across the west it will get drier through the day as the rain becomes more focused across central and southeastern areas of England. Low pressure still not too far away from the east coast, and that will be dragging in more in the way of cloud and onshore breeze as well. So that will bring a cooler feel tomorrow for many of us, but still in the sunshine, temperatures climbing up to the high teens. That's not too bad at all. It will still feel fairly pleasant. There'll be more in the way of sunshine to start the day on Friday, particularly across western areas. In the east, it's still going to be a fairly cloudy day with some outbreaks of rain that could turn heavy as we head into the afternoon. But signs of things improving for the weekend. Much more in the way of sunshine to come and temperatures climbing towards the low 20s.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight, and I have got the very first of tomorrow's front pages for you. Let's do it. I start with the I. Labour promises to fix doctors threatening retirement. I've also got Diane Abbott dares Starmer try to stop me. Labour plan to ease out veteran left-winger collapses. I mean, that has been a catastrophe. Let's go to the Telegraph. Abbott, I will not be intimidated by Starmer. She has decided to very much not go quietly. Labour plots VAT raid to pay for its policies, claims Jeremy Hunt. Jeremy Hunt has today accused Labour of having a secret plan to raise VAT and challenges Sir Keir Starmer to explicitly rule it out. There's also a story at the bottom there about Gary Lineker, which I will return to shortly. But now, the Daily Mail. World exclusive revealed the Crown's case against Lord Lucan. Unearthed by the Mail after 50 years, the official Scotland Yard report that exposes bombshell new details about how the notorious peer plotted his wife's murder before killing his children's nanny and vanishing without a trace. Let's go to the Metro. Cynical election doc strike. Walk out before Britain goes to the polls. Junior doctors have been accused of a cynical election stunt by calling 5 days of strikes the week before polling day on July the 4th. They will abandon hospitals from June 27th to July the 2nd in their bid to win a pay rise of up to 35%. Joint leader Dr Robert Lawrenson said that their 11th walkout, the first since February, will be the biggest and loudest yet. I interviewed Dr Robert Lawrenson a few months ago and I asked him that even if they got a 35% pay rise, would he still leave and go and become a doctor in America or Canada? And he said he might do. So it does make me question, really, what's the point in all of this, because people's lives will be lost. But, hey, anyway. Also, of course, there was a doctor's strike where he decided he had to go to a relative's wedding and go on holiday and all of that. Anyway, whatever. He's a nice chap. I'm sure he is. Right, OK. Yeah, Rebecca, I'll start with you on this. This cynical election doctor's strike. I mean, who are they trying to kid with this? This is going to cost people's lives.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily cynical. It's hard tactics, and that is a strong union, and that's how you get yourself a pay rise. It shouldn't have gone on this long. Talks should have been more successful than they have been, and I think it's a failure of management that it's got this far. But yeah, absolutely, there's no question. This is political. This is saying to people, vote Labour. That's clearly what the unions want.
Yeah, I mean, they were saying that it's not politically motivated. Adam, I would suggest that this means it absolutely is.
This is political, and it will cost lives, like the rest of their strikes have cost lives. That's people's loved ones that will die because these people are playing politics with their lives. Their 35% demands aren't backed even by Labour, aren't backed by many people that I speak to in the NHS who do not back this strike. They're on their own. I think the public sentiment on this, you know, they've got hardly any support with the public.
Yeah, all right. Look, I know, Mark, I asked you a little bit about the doctor strike earlier on when we were waiting for the Labour ministers, shadow ministers, so I'll whiz it on if that's all right. I want to talk about what's on the front of the Daily Telegraph. Gary Lineker, I tweet so that I can sleep at night. Oh, God. So Gary Lineker has written in the Telegraph today, or there's an article, so he claimed that he continues to tweet about controversial political issues so that he can look himself in the mirror at night. Speaking at a literature and arts festival, the BBC's star presenter said, I don't think I probably make a blind bit of difference, but if it makes a difference to me, and that's important, I don't do it to try to influence, I do it so I can look at myself in the mirror at night. Of course, he did find himself in hot water last year when he compared the language used to describe the Conservative government's Rwanda policy as that of Nazi Germany. Mark, I mean, I don't think Gary Lineker needs any help looking in the mirror, do you?
I mean, this is narcissism on a different level, isn't it? I mean, he is paid an absolute mint by licence fee payers to present football programmes, right? That's what the public expect of him. I don't think he's a bad presenter in that regard. But he now admits, at last, it's all about him. It's to make a difference to him. It's about how he feels. You know what? I'd have more respect for him if he said, I appreciate I'm a football presenter, but I actually want to use my platform to influence politics. He's claiming he has no influence. It's all about him and how he feels, not about the poor licence fee payer who's paying his colossal salary. I wish he'd either stick to football or at least be honest with himself that he's actually is trying to influence things. So I think that's exactly what he's trying to do.
Look, I think if Gary Lineker was an ice cream, he would eat himself. This man you know, is in love with himself. I'm surprised he's actually away from a mirror in his house. You know, he's up there with Carol Vorderman with pure narcissism. They do think that they are changing people's minds. They do think that they're actually influencing this general election. They're on cloud cuckoo land. I haven't spoke to someone that likes Gary Lineker for a long, long time. I think he's alienated a lot of normal people in society. I think, you know, he really is deluded.
And you shouldn't be able to do this on a BBC contract.
No. Go on, Rebecca. No doubt a staunch defence of Gary Lineker.
I mean, I can take him or leave him, but it is called a metaphor. He's not literally saying, so I can look in a mirror, just in case anybody was confused. He's saying in order to be able to feel like he's a decent person using his platform appropriately.
Oh, I didn't know what that meant.
He feels like he should point it out. So I don't think that he is suggesting that he is somehow changing the world. I think he's saying if you have a platform, it's important to speak about issues that matter to you, which I think is good. I think he has previously pointed out that he's not a political commentator for the BBC, so he is allowed, because he's a sports commentator, to talk about politics. I think that's reasonable and appropriate.
All right.
He wouldn't have 25 million followers or whatever he's got if it wasn't for the BBC and the licence fee payer. Let's just remember that.
All right. Well, look, hey, Gary Lineker has said that he doesn't think it makes a blind bit of difference. He does it because it's important to him, his tweet. So that's nice. Now, he's 9 million followers, by the way, apparently. Wow,
right,
remarkable.
Okay.
Anyway, but now, a recently elected Labour councillor has been caught barefaced lying about being a lifelong Tory voter as part of an election stunt. Millie Hill from Stroud District Council shared her support for Sir Keir Starmer in a video posted on X as she endorsed the Labour candidate Dr Simon Offer. But Millie has not actually voted Conservative since David Cameron and backed Jeremy Corbyn at the 2019 election. Shall we hear what she had to say in this video?
I've been a centrist Conservative all my life, but I think the party's really changed, and I think the last 14 years has done real damage to the country. So I've been looking at Labour, and I think they've got some very exciting policies on the economy, the NHS, mental health issues, green energy. So having met Simon Offer, who's a local GP and has worked here for 30 years, he really understands this community, and I think he'd make a great MP. So for the first time in a really long time, I'm optimistic and excited to vote in a general election.
Mark, turns out she's a Labour councillor.
It's unreal, isn't it? Look, Patrick, I'll let you into a secret of the dark arts of politics. When GB News viewers get leaflets arriving on their doormat and they'll see on the back, Jim, 38, local resident, endorses such and such a candidate. Jane, 47, from the area, says oftentimes these are actually pictures of party activists. But this woman is actually claiming she is a lifelong Conservative, despite being an elected Labour councillor and voting for the Labour Party 5 years ago. You know what I think should happen? The Labour Party should conduct an investigation. 13 months later, Keir Starmer can and ah about whether to kick her off the local council. That's presumably what happens.
She'll be standing outside Stroud Town Hall.
Demanding that the people allow her to run again.
She's going to stand no matter what. Yeah, Adam, look, what do you make of this? We're going to have to watch out for a lot of this stuff over the course of the election campaign, aren't we?
I speak about why I've lost all trust in UK politics. And things like this just underline why. From MPs to councillors, they think we're idiots, and we are being treated like idiots by these people. Now, how did she think she would get away with that? How stupid have you got to be? And that's what is running our country, and that is what is running our areas in our authorities.
Rebecca, I've noticed a little bit of a trend so far this election. OK, so we started with Jonathan Ashworth just refusing to bother to try to explain votes for kids, the 16-year-olds, and there is a case for that. He just chose not to bother to make it. I had a Labour Party activist, former Blair advisor on last night, who, again, didn't really seem content to engage in a discussion about their schools policy. And we did just have a Labour front bencher on earlier on. People can make their own minds up about the approach that she took to that interview. And then you see this now where Labour put out a councillor in an advert. I just wonder if they feel as though they've already won this and they don't really have to try.
I think there's two things going on there. I think in terms of this specific woman, Millie Hill, I think this is a slightly uncharitable reading, because I think what she's saying is I was a lifelong Tory voter, centrist Tory, until the 2019 election. She wasn't clear enough, and she should have been clearer, but I think she was a Tory previous to that, and that's what she meant. In terms of Labour not feeling they need to explain, not needing to play ball, I think GB News has a specific experience because the Labour Party are, I think, traditionally quite nervous of right-wing media. And I also think that they are working on the basis they'll be in power next and you will need them. So they can probably play a bit of a hard game because if none of them will come on here, we're going to have a harder time having these conversations. So I think GB News has a specific experience, but I think they are being very careful, and it is better to say less than to say more, and you can't get yourself in trouble if you keep your mouth shut.
I do wonder how long this tactic, and I think it's fair to say it is a tactic. I'm very grateful for them coming on. I'm grateful for any politician coming on, as everyone will know. And we're going to see more of it over the course of this campaign. People would argue, but there is a case to say this is good politics, which is if you don't explain anything, or you don't really engage, or you laugh things off, then you can't really do too much wrong. But I think the public actually do want answers. Like, they want to be sold certain things. You need to be sold votes for kids, for example. I don't think you can just have, oh, this is no big deal. Yeah. It is a big deal. It is.
It is a big deal. And I think this is when the crunch point will come. Likely, week after next, the parties will launch their manifestos. And if the Labour Party manifesto is 20 or 30 pages of word salad, the problem is Labour spokespeople will start contradicting themselves.
Yeah.
And you'll pick up that one spokesman has said this, and that doesn't seem to be in line with what somebody else has said. So I actually think it would be in the Labour Party's best interest to actually have a very clear line on things. But as the Diane Abbott thing suggests, they haven't really got to that stage yet.
Let's be honest with the viewers out there. Labour are going to win this general election, not because they're popular, not because people support them. It's because so many people hate the Tories and what has happened. And I think that is the truth of this election. So many people are going to vote them just because they're not blue.
Well, one of the Labour policies is to eliminate, pledges, is to eliminate the NHS backlog within 5 years. But with junior doctors announcing that strike action, would a Starmer-led government actually end up caving into the unions? We'll be discussing a bit of that in tonight's Greatest Britain Union Jackass. But first, you will not believe what a prominent Muslim figure says to this.
People were chanting death to America. Some people were, not everyone, but some people were.
Yeah, I have to wait and see to find out what happens there. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We are on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, England fans got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
OK, well, I will be playing you a clip from an exclusive GB News documentary about how Islam has made a US town unrecognisable. That's going to be happening very, very shortly. But before all of that, I've got more of your front pages for you. Let's go to the Mirror. We're behind you, Keir. So it's Keir Starmer, the Labour leader there, posing with student nurses on an election campaign. There we go. Also, right underneath it, you are pure evil. So it's a mixtures of light and shade there on the Mirror's front page. Teacher murdered a lover, then had a drink with his mum. Right, gosh. Let's go to the Nationals. We're going north of the border now. This did make me chuckle a little bit. UK party leaders debate confirmed, except for viewers in Scotland. Apparently, John Swinney, who's been the SNP leader for about 2.5 minutes, is absolutely raging that he is not part of the leaders' debates that are taking place. And so he's not going to be on ITV. There we go. So that's John Swinney there, the leader of the SNP, who's absolutely livid, apparently, that he doesn't get to stand alongside Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak. I'm going to look at an inside story in the Daily Telegraph. A new YouGov poll has the Greens ahead of the Conservatives with the under-50s. Overall, the Conservatives placed 27 points behind Labour. Among the under-50s, the party was on 8%, which is equal to Reform. Labour's on 59%, the Lib Dems are on 6%, and the Greens are on 12%. Mark, the under-50s is a big chunk of voters.
Just trying to do the maths here. I'm guessing that's pretty much half the electorate.
Right.
18 to 50, 50 to 82, have I got my maths right?
They're behind the Greens.
I'm pretty sceptical about that poll. I don't know what the sample size is. If the Conservatives only get 8% amongst the under-50s, unless it's the case that it's only people aged in their 50s and older who actually turn out and vote.
OK, all right. I mean, do you think, Rebecca, that there is a chance that Britain is actually just going to be a socialist country and stay that way forever?
Maybe people care about climate change and recycling and having nice green things and more plants. It's also, to be fair, the Greens is a very natural place to dump your vote if you don't want to vote for anybody else.
Yeah.
So I've always gone women's equality or green if I don't like the person.
Or if you're massively pro-Gaza, apparently, as we saw as a local council election. That was an odd day.
People have a lot of reasonable concerns, and it's a good place to go if you feel you're socially conscious and poorly represented.
Yeah, all right. I mean, what do you make of that then, Adam? The poll today, it's in the Daily Telegraph, is saying that apparently the Tories are less popular than the Green Party with the under-50s.
Well, I know they're unpopular, but that's utter nonsense. And I think you'll see that during the general election. It's going to be closer than people say. I mean, I still think it's going to be an annihilation and a Labour majority, but those figures just don't make... I don't know anyone that would vote Green.
I mean, that might be a little bit of a skewed sample. Like, I don't know anyone who'd vote Reform. I think that might just be who we know.
All right, well, look, hey, find out what happens when Muslims take over an American city. Apparently, pro-Hamas parades, animal sacrifice and a ban on LGBT flags, Arabic signs and restrictions on music lessons in schools. Well, in a GB News documentary, our US correspondent, Stephen Edgington, goes to a place possibly ironically called Hamtramck, Michigan, to investigate how Islam has changed the town. Here's a clip.
Just down the road here in Dearborn a few weeks ago, there was a protest, a rally to do with Gaza and Israel, and people were chanting death to America. Some people were, not everyone, but some people were.
There was one individual that said it.
There was at least one. I think there were several. But what do you make of that chant, and do you support its message?
My real message is that Islam is America's last hope, okay? I want Joe Biden to know when he suffers on that night, knowing that he lost the election like the loser that he is, like the bloodthirsty, maniacal murderer that he is. People are limiting it by saying, what will you do come November? What happened in this genocide against Palestinians is going to be the center focus of our political engagement for the rest of our lives. We will never forget it. And we will make sure anybody who did not sign on to ceasefire resolutions will pay the price with this.
What do you mean by that?
They will lose their power. We will get them out of office.
Yeah, it's all normal stuff there. So, Joe Biden would no doubt deny that he is a murderer, as claimed by that gentleman there. You can watch the full documentary. I've been privileged enough to have a little sneak peek of this. It is absolutely bonkers. So it is America's Muslim city. It's on the GB News YouTube channel, and Stephen Edgington, our US reporter, has done some really fascinating work there, including actually putting some of their own tweets back to them. It is astonishing stuff, actually, really, so go and have a look at it. But we're going over to South Korea now, where residents are being forced to take cover after North Korea's government sent hundreds of hot air balloons over the contested border. But wait, there's more. The balloons, unbelievably, are filled with rubbish and actual human poo, with the South Koreans warning Pyongyang to immediately desist from its inhumane and vulgar actions. I mean, that's a fair request. I mean, it's also the way that they look, of course, which is possibly quite rude in itself. But, yeah, I mean, let's hope North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is listening. Thank you very much. One for the cheap seats at the back there. I mean, yeah, look, this is an escalation in tensions between the countries. We all thought it would go nuclear, but it is literally right now, as it currently happens, culminating. It's gone poo clear. It's gone poo clear. OK, it's time to reveal today's greatest Britain Union jackass. All right, drag us out of the gutter, Mark. Who's your greatest Britain?
OK, here's a lovely story. Two teenage lads, Freddie Corbett and Harley Hollingworth, 15 and 16, stopped an adult chap killing himself on the rail tracks. They jumped onto the rail tracks, pulled him away, saved his life. And for all of this, anybody under the age of 50 is voting Green, and, you know, the youth of today, we need to, you know, look down on them. Two heroes here, Freddie and Harley, good lads.
Oh, good stuff. Well, that's a fantastic stuff. Well done, lads. That is fantastic. Right, Adam?
Mine is J.K. Rowling. She's just done a interview in The Times saying why she's fighting back for women against the trans agenda. And thank God that she is. She's the biggest voice probably in the world pushing back against some of this lunacy. So please carry on.
OK, all right. Rebecca, who's your greatest Britain, please?
I'm sure you'll agree that Angela Rayner deserves our congratulations. There's no police action going forward because apparently there's no problem there.
Apparently there's no problem there, yes. I think she might have had some decent news from HMRC as well today. But yes, of course, it does slightly counteract the issues that she might have had with some particular gentlemen in Ashton. Today's winners of the Greatest Britain are, Mark, I'm going to ask you to name them again for me, please.
Freddie Corbett and Harley Hollingworth.
Who saved a chap's life, or at least in any event prevented him from killing himself, or taking his own life. So well done. Mark, who's your union jackass, please?
Keir Starmer for me. 13 months to fail to make a decision about whether Diane Abbott can be a Labour candidate on a very short letter in a newspaper. Pathetic.
OK, go on.
My nomination is the junior doctors for playing politics with people's lives. People will die during this strike, and it is politically motivated. It's unforgivable, and it hasn't got very much support.
I do find it, you know, really, it is people's lives. I know, you know, strike action can be an important vessel to getting your demands met and all of that, and I don't want to live in a world where we ban strike action. But then you look at it and you think people's lives will be lost as a result of this, and the backlog that they say that they, you know, are so desperate to clear. Well, how are they going to do that if they keep adding to it? But go on, Rebecca, who's your union jackass?
Mine is Rishi Sunak for the announcement about national service. It is the most barrel-scraping politics. But also, if we are going to bring a national service, why don't we have people do it at 60? That sounds like a much better idea.
Why do you think it's such a terrible idea, national service? Because it's not all about people going and serving in the military. It is more about things like delivering prescriptions to old people of a weekend.
Well, the main reason that it was stopped originally is because the military were like, please stop sending us these idiots, we can't cope with them. But in terms of it being but also national service, which went on after the war, but specifically to this version of it, people at 18 have a right to get on with their lives. They have a right to get into education, to get into training, to do whatever it is they feel they need to do. Also, a lot of people who are 18 can be breadwinners for their families. People are parents at 18. It's infantilising. Whereas when you get to retirement age, if you perhaps would like to give back to the world, why not go and teach what you've learned?
They've put in their whole lives. Well, what do you mean, give back? They've literally supported a country.
What have they taken away?
Oh, my God.
What, the people, before you draw your pension, you might want to give something. What have 18-year-olds taken
At 60 years of age,
60,
you
65?
have put in to the country for a good part of 4 or 5 decades.
But in what?
Oh, please.
Well, tax, presumably.
I give up.
But these people are about to do that.
OK, all right. Well, today's winners of the Union Jackass are going to be the junior doctors, the strikers. There we go. So they are the Union Jackasses. Well, look, thank you very much. It's been a lively show. I will be with you again tomorrow from 9 p.m. I am thoroughly enjoying this election period. You never quite know what madness is going to happen. There were, unfortunately for everybody, no new policies there on the front of the papers today, but that probably means that there will be some tomorrow. So all the more reason to tune in then. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And yes, headliners are up next. They'll be whizzing you through an even more detailed look at all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. I'm hoping that I can have something decent lined up for you tomorrow. A couple more front benches along the way as we pick through the noise of what has so far anyway been a slightly bonkers but nonetheless very important general election campaign. It's your weather now.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be another showery day tomorrow. The showers will be much more focused across eastern areas and it should stay a bit drier across the west. That's as high pressure is slowly building in from the west, but in the east, low pressure is still in charge and that will continue to bring some pretty heavy outbreaks of rain to parts of southern Scotland, northeastern England through this evening. That's where there's a weather warning in force until the early hours of Thursday. Heavy rain will push into parts of Wales, possibly the southwest of England as well by tomorrow morning. So risks of outbreaks of heavy rain by tomorrow morning. A fairly mild night though, temperatures only dipping down as low as 11 or 12 degrees for many towns and cities. So a mild start to the day, but it will be quite a cloudy day and there will be some heavy rain around. Across the northeast of Scotland, actually it will turn much drier than it has been today through tomorrow morning. Some brightness across parts of the central belt as well, but elsewhere further south across Northern Ireland, Northern England as well, cloudy with a risk of some showery outbreaks of rain. It's particularly this band across central England into parts of Wales where it could be quite a wet start to the day. There's also a risk of some heavy showers breaking out across the south coast first thing. Some areas will stay dry and I think across the west it will get drier through the day as the rain becomes more focused across central and southeastern areas of England. Low pressure still not too far away from the east coast and that will be dragging in more in the way of cloud and onshore breeze as well. So that will bring a cooler feel tomorrow for many of us, but still in the sunshine, temperatures climbing up to the high teens. That's not too bad at all. It will still feel fairly pleasant. There'll be more in the way of sunshine to start the day on Friday, particularly across western areas. In the east, it's still going to be a fairly cloudy.
It's the final week to see how you can win a whopping £20,000 cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So the UK's most popular baby names have been revealed, with Noah and Olivia again topping the annual list. In at number 2 is Mohammed for boys. List is on the screen here. Number 3 for boys is George. Then it goes Olivia. Then it's Leo, Arthur, and so on. And for girls, so Olivia is number 1. Then Amelia, Isla, Ava, Lily, Ivy, Freya. There we go. Any of those names take your pick? Where's Dawn, by the way?
Well, yeah, there's on the Telegraph website, right, there's a really good way linked into this where you can actually put your name into the search engine, and these are names from 2022, by the way, and it tells you how common your name was. And I did put Dawn in. It's never been that popular. Can't think why. And there were only 5 babies named Dawn in 2022.
Really? That's surprising.
It's not
Wow.
Full confession here, right? My middle name, Mum, I hate you, is Maureen. Why is everyone laughing? My middle name is Maureen, which is a good old-fashioned East End name, and that has completely died out. There were no babies named Maureen.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Names like Keith, for example, Peter. Would you call a baby these days Keith or Ian? Baby Ian?
Without a doubt. I feel like I'm in a persecuted minority, you see, because later on, when I'm watching the boxing with Terry, Steve, Mick, Phil and Kev, right, and Peter, there are no such names featuring in this list. We are dying out. Our names will soon be gone forever, and I feel victimised by it.
Likewise, I should think we should start a campaign group and go on a protest march through London.
Hans, what do you make about Mohammed being number 2 for boys' names?
You know, I'm not going to comment on people. You know, they're going to call what they want to call. What I find interesting is people that do double barrel because they can't decide, and you know, a lot of people do that, and that's a bit difficult because I think you should just pick a name. You know.
I tell you names that are falling down the list though: Harry and Meghan.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock. You're with GB News, and our top story tonight. The Labour veteran MP Diane Abbott has hit back at the rumours tonight, vowing to be the MP for Hackney North and Stoke Newington in London for as long as is possible, she said. She told a rally of supporters tonight in East London she would always stand with them. Earlier on today, Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, said Labour hadn't taken any decision to ban her from standing as an MP. Well, at the same time, Jeremy Corbyn has launched his campaign to be re-elected as an independent MP for Islington North, also in London. The launch was hosted at a community centre which he opened in 2018. He's vowed to be an independent voice for equality, democracy and peace. The Prime Minister hit back at plans today by junior doctors to stage another round of strikes next month. Members of the British Medical Association are planning to walk out for 5 days, starting on the 27th of June. He was speaking at a campaign event this afternoon, and he said it was politically motivated to go on strike and certainly not in the interests of staff.
Today's action by the junior doctors, on the same day as the Labour Party are having a health day, does slightly ponder the question as to whether this is politically motivated. It's hard to escape that conclusion given the timing and to call a strike in an election campaign, especially as we found a constructive resolution with the remainder of the NHS workforce.
Meanwhile, Labour said today NHS waiting list targets would be met within 5 years of a government with them. And it's according to a pledge made by Sir Keir Starmer this afternoon. The plan would see an additional 40,000 appointments in England each week, making use of time during the evenings and at weekends. And he said, bringing wait times to within an 18-week target. The Conservatives labelled the move copy and paste politics and pointed instead to their plan to invest in NHS technology. The owners of Royal Mail agreed a £3.5 billion takeover bid by a Czech billionaire today. The deal will see the continuation of One Price Goes Anywhere, first-class post 6 days a week as well. The company's branding will also remain, as will its UK headquarters. But the sale has attracted heavy criticism from senior politicians and unions alike, amid concerns over the future of the Royal Mail's service to the public. GB News can reveal that environmental activists plan to target the UK's busiest airports over the last 2 weeks of July. Just Stop Oil plans to target airports this summer, including Heathrow and Gatwick, at the height of the getaway, in order to cause, they say, maximum disruption. The group's also running a series of online courses aimed at encouraging and informing volunteers on how best to carry out the protests. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Thursday's newspapers. I am Simon Evans. Joining me tonight we have two fine stand-up comedians, one vigorously active, Scott Capurro, the other one resting monastically. That's Nick Dixon. In a temporary or perhaps permanent sabbatical. What do you think, Nick? Will you ever come back?
I went into semi-retirement because I tried to follow Scott one night and I couldn't.
You were great. It was fine. Your set was fine.
That's true.
Well, you're going to have an opportunity next Monday, of course, if you wanted to burst on.
No, I don't want to. I need to get back in practice to compete with the mighty Simon Evans.
This is so inappropriate if you're bringing this up with me sitting right here.
Oh, God, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm not sure both of you could appear unannounced. I'd be quite happy to give you a bit of stage time. Anyway, let's have a look at the front pages. We kick off with the Daily Mail, as always, revealed the Crown's case against Lord Lucan. Could justice be about to close in on the old chap? Telegraph, Abbott, I will not be intimidated by Starmer. There she is in a biker jacket. Express, you've buckled. Hunt's win as Labour back down on tax rises. Financial Times, Europe has tiny fraction of air power needed to guard NATO's eastern flank. The iNews have Abbott dare Starmer, try to stop me. And finally, the Daily Star, Third World War. I'm not sure that's appropriate. They were front pages. So we're going to start, unusually, with the Metro. Scott.
Cynical election doctor strike.